The Biden administration, for the first time in the war in Ukraine, has allowed U.S.-funded weaponry to be used as direct attacks into Russia. So, of course, we're discussing that, what it means, what the political fallout means. And is this just a setup not only for another world war, but a setup against a new Trump administration, making it look like, is this playing politics?
This is the most dangerous period, a lame duck presidency for Joe Biden, with all the full powers of the presidency, making moves here at the end of his administration. And this is something that the U.S. has said their policy was for the entirety of the involvement with the Ukraine-Russia war, was that, hey, we're going to send you defensive weaponry. We're going to send you all this aid. We're sending you over $150 billion worth of it, but you can't strike inside of Russia.
Right.
This has to be for defensive use, defend your territory. We don't want to escalate this war into something bigger. But now the Biden administration in this 11th hour decision is changing their mind, saying that the U.S. supplied long-range weapons can be used against Russian territory, specifically targeting soldiers from a different nation, the North Korean soldiers that are there.
Feels like a political move, but one that could have just dire consequences. I mean, again, I don't know if everyone's really familiar with how many troops from North Korea are in these regions. It's said that there are thousands of troops to the Kursk region in western Russia to assist Putin's force in the war on Ukraine. And then it says, of course, this decision was communicated to Ukraine 3 days ago, the decision to try to deter North Korea from sending more troops to Russia. So again, who are we talking about we're fighting right now? Russia and North Korea.
Making a shift in policy this late just comes across as borderline reckless to me. The fact that you would all of a sudden say, we've had this policy ever since Russia invaded and we started sending you all this military aid, but now is the time that we're going to kind of unleash the arsenal that we are sending you and say you can use it offensively in Russian regions.
Let's state a couple of facts here. It's being done in the middle of the transition. So Biden is making moves about his legacy to pretend like he was always there for Ukraine. This is an administration that has never wanted to have a peace agreement. They don't want peaceful settlements. They literally, there's no other conclusion to come to, but they want war. They've funded the war. They've never funded a peace operation. They've never funded peace agreements. Joe Biden has not spoken to Vladimir Putin in more than 3 years. Think about that. This is a disaster. You see the Turks, our NATO ally Turkey, that has gone, they've come forward, President Erdogan, with a peace idea that they've presented at the G20. Think about that. America is not putting forward a peace document, a peace process, but the Turks are. And this is a disaster for America's reputation because all we're doing is funding war. And the last piece that I'll say, just as a point of fact, is that even President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has come out, and I tweeted about this, he's come out and said that in 2025, the solution to what's going on between Russia and Ukraine is a diplomatic, peaceful solution. You now have the president of Ukraine saying, we want a peaceful solution. You have Turkey, our NATO ally, saying, here's a peaceful idea. And what happens? Joe Biden says, why don't you start launching missiles into Russia? This is a total disaster of epic proportion. And I think that the media need to start asking, what is Joe Biden's actual goal here? Why does he keep funding war and why does he keep rejecting any peace ideas?
We also know, Will, that this is coming at a time when Vladimir Putin just a few weeks ago made a statement, and he said, if this was obviously talking about that, he said, if this decision is taken, it will mean nothing less than the direct involvement of NATO countries, the United States, and European countries in the war in Ukraine. This will be their direct participation, and this, of course, will significantly change the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. When you have an American people who voted so overwhelmingly for President Trump, for policies, and you can even say for President Trump, for Tulsi Gabbard, for a lot of these people who have strong military backgrounds but have a distinct distaste for the act of war, to escalate this, it's just a moment of chaos. And you even have Secretary Blinken obviously going out in a few months.
As we're working to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to effectively defend itself. The United States continues to step up. We've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine. That was in September. Another almost $500 million just a few weeks ago. And President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
Pretty much just saying, hey, we're going to get as much money as we can to Ukraine because who knows what these Trump people are going to do.
You know, they keep talking about the peaceful transfer of power. And while that is related to handing over the reins of the government, they are actively making an escalation in war, which will lead to a less peaceful time for the United States during this transition period. And I think that while there isn't a ton that can be done as of right now, it shows the importance of why even President Trump is getting people lined up already ahead of being sworn into office of who he's going to nominate to these offices, that they can start hitting the ground running, meeting with senators, being able to explain why they need to be leading these departments so that, one, we can cut government waste. Two, we cannot be meddling and escalating our involvement in foreign wars, which is a mandate, I believe, of the Trump administration, and everything that trickles down from that. When they have spent so much time in trying to reshape the Department of Defense with more liberal policies throughout the past 4 years, but at the same time, also wanting to escalate these wars, but say we don't want boots on the ground, what you end up is with a weaker Department of Defense that has so entangled us in foreign wars that at some point the United States may actually have to be involved in those wars. And the problem is that they've also weakened our stature on the world stage.
We're funding with U.S. taxpayer dollars billions and billions of dollars to the Ukrainian war. And Joe Biden hasn't picked up the phone and even spoken to Vladimir Putin. Now, I don't want a president who is afraid to engage with people who are starting wars. We need somebody who calls them up, meets with them and says, knock it off. What's going on? How do we solve this? But you have to be able to talk to someone in order to have a peace agreement. And instead, Joe Biden just keeps using our tax dollars to escalate. Now, saying that it's okay to launch missiles into Russia is very provocative. And I'm clear-eyed. I get what Russia is doing. They anteed up this war as well. They ratcheted it up. They're launching strikes, and it's unacceptable. But you got to pick up the phone and be able to talk if you want to be able to have negotiations for peace. And that's just the war in Ukraine that we're talking about. You look at what's happening in the Middle East, that's out of control. And this legacy of the Biden-Harris administration is going to be more wars that continue to escalate. They haven't been able to stop the wars, and they haven't been able to stop them from getting worse.